countless Earths, all rotating around their suns in exactly the same way as our 7 planets in our solar system. We only see the suns because they are the largest bodies and are luminous, but their planets remain invisible to us because they are smaller and non-luminous. The countless worlds in the universe are no worse and no less inhibited than our Earth, for it is utterly unreasonable to suppose that those teeming worlds, which are as magnificent as our own, perhaps more so, and which enjoy the fructifying rays of a sun just as we do, should be uninhibited and should not bear similar or even more perfect inhibitants than our Earth. The unnumbered worlds in the universe are similar in form and rank and subject to the same forces and the same laws. Destroy those theories that Earth is the center of the universe. Crush the supernatural powers said to animate the world, along with the so-called crystalline spheres. Open the door through which you can look out into the limitless, unified firmament composed of similar elements, and show us that the other worlds float in an ethereal ocean like our own. Make it plain to us that the motions of all the worlds proceed from inner forces, and teach us in the light of such attitudes to go forward with surreal and tread the investigation and discovery of nature. Take comfort. The time will come when all men will see as I do. Welcome to Researchers Radio Live. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Joe K. We are joined with my main man, Tim C. And welcome to freedomslips.com. Tonight is a very special program, very dear to me. It's focused on an early Hermetic master from the 16th century, Giordano Bruno. Tim knows him well. Tim and I have spoken on Bruno for a good length of time, over a length of time as well. And it's a very fascinating individual. And the opening quote there was, of course, by Giordano Bruno. And I should mention, in that quote, is one of my favorites because it really encompasses so much of Giordano's beliefs, being that the sun was the center of the universe, which, of course, was really not accepted until Galileo's time, which was really 2 decades after Bruno when all that really came to fruition. But he also explained how there were worlds revolving around other suns and that there was life on many other planets. This was something Giordano Bruno felt very strongly about. And we will get into all of that. Before we do, I'd like to say hello to Tim C. Tim C., how are you, buddy?
Doing well, Joe. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. So the weather's been a little funny. I always like to talk about weather because it does have a profound effect on everyone, whether they notice it or not. It certainly does in my views. And from what I understand, you had one cold day up there today.
Yeah, it hit 65, and it was actually this is my favorite type of weather, to be honest with you. As long as it's not raining and it's just nice and cool. And I really dig the autumn. You know,
is it autumn? Does it feel like the season's on you now?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Today was the first day, but I don't do well in humidity. So any break from that, it's great.
Right on. I'm a big fan of autumn myself. That's my favorite season. 'Tis the season. Autumn.
What you guys hit down in the Carolinas?
It was colder than normal, but it was low 70s at the coldest maybe.
You were still wearing shorts.
Yeah. I'm in shorts right now. Yeah. It's probably still about 75. Yeah. I wouldn't expect it to get there. It's just a cold day today. It's back in the 80s tomorrow and all week. It's still summer here. But that's the South. That's the Southeast. Right. Weather's crazy, man. Crazy all over the place. Seriously, man. Wild. Like the whole East here, we're just tons of rain, a lot more rain, unseasonable. We have more rain just here in the whole Southeast. More so that we have more than our years total. And then we have places like the out west where they need water bad, man. They need it really bad. You know, when I talk to friends out there like Parker, Mike Parker has a show here, Electric Pyramid. These are always concerns of his because it wasn't too long ago, just a few months ago, there was a pretty big fire. One of a couple of the hillsides caught way, and he was evacuated from his house. And it's happened to a few people I've known. It's scary stuff.
I
Thank
saw a
goodness
headline.
everyone I know is okay, but
I saw a
hopefully
headline
it doesn't.
earlier that they're hoping that the elite of California are going to step up and give some kind of financial help towards taking care of the crisis out there with the drought. I
Right.
don't know what that's going to really do, but
Well, it doesn't sound that promising to me, but I'm grateful there's an effort to some degree. At least it shows acknowledgement. Usually those people keep themselves safe from all danger, so they're usually in a pretty good place. But Tim, big show tonight, buddy. Bruno, one of my favorites. Truly one of my favorites in history. He's in my top 10. He might be like number 5 or so, 5 or 6, but
a different type of martyr.
Important,
A different type of martyr, Joe.
A different type of martyr. Well, we should start by that, right? He was a martyr. He was definitely martyred. But I guess that would be someone's outlook. Some people, well, obviously some people felt he was well deserving of it. But that was a very choice few. And hopefully we'll even get into the reasons. I've spoken about it before, Tim, on the show and others. My suspicions on a lot of Giordano's activity. I will conspire, if you will. But we should say, let's say Giordano Bruno started his life. He was born outside of Florence in a little territory called Nola. This is a nickname Giordano carried his whole life. He was known as the Nolan. He was even in the book written the century after him. What is the name of that book? Slipped my mind completely. I'll come back to that in a minute. I totally had a brain fart there. I was thinking about a few things at once. Tim, this is a very crazy time he's born into. It's a very, very wild time. This is a crossroads in many civilizations, many beliefs and religions, and quite a lot of turmoil over land battles, even directly in his area of Italy. I'll call it modern day Italy, but in his time, this was not Italy. These were independent states for the most part, or they were under Roman control. By that I mean the church. And there were certain areas, specifically Venice and Florence, which were able to maintain this freedom that they had. They were not under the church's rules, but they were. It was a very fine line they crossed, and they knew crossing that line would bring on battles, and they really didn't want that. No one really wanted that. But he was born into the time where the Inquisition was already running strong. Besides the Inquisition, we had witch hunts going on as well, which people always seem to forget. For the century in which Giordano lived, in the 1500s, there's somewhere about 4 million people that were killed either by the Inquisition or in the witch hunts. I have a hard time deciphering the difference between the two. I guess the difference would be who was carrying out the punishments, but ultimately they both came to fruition at the same time, and they were targeting certain individuals.
Their beliefs.
Oh, most certainly.
Really, that's what it all boils down to.
We're trying to squash the Kabbalist Hebrews, and also any Hermetics or anyone with pagan beliefs that would certainly fall in the witchcraft at that time. But with the Inquisition, they were really seeking out converting most of all. They wanted people to convert, but they focused on the Eastern Eastern Roman Empire Christians, which had a few variations in beliefs of Christianity, and also with pretty much all other Hebrews besides the Kabbalists. Um, they were more secular, and thus the Magnificarum book that was put out, which is the Witch's Hammer, which was in the 1480s. It came out, and it was to basically just to hunt down anyone with beliefs from the early days, and to put an end to that. And Giordano's in the crossroads. He's one of the last few, most certainly one of the last few to be vocal. I could assure that. He had a great impact on a lot of people. He was definitely within the circles of the Medici of Florence, and as most scholars and artists were at that time. He had very strong beliefs, and he wouldn't waver from them. And he was well taught. He had access to fantastic books, a wonderful library, and the teachers to go with it. And we should also note there's people like Galileo, who was he was a friend of Giordano Bruno's. He was present when Giordano Bruno was killed. It definitely had an impact on him. Knowing this, I could only say this in my own opinion of the impact. There's no writings of Galileo on Bruno.
Yeah, to be honest, Joe, I've read different accounts where it's even in question if they ever met, but definitely that Galileo had read and studied some of Bruno's works. So I mean, I've also read that they did, but
right? No, it's such
you
a
got to be careful where you pick your information. You know how it goes.
Exactly. But this was the time where not just a crossroads. Tim, you and I have spoken about this a lot. A lot of history was basically just covered up to just make it simple. It was changed, or more, no one knew it, so the story was written. So here's the story, folks. This was a long time ago, but they had, in my opinion, they had to have known each other. They were both acquiring same books from same authors at the same time. They knew all of the same people. They were if Bruno was spending a great deal of time in the Medici library over 20 years of his life, Galileo was the teacher of the Medici children for over 40 years. In this house, in this library. But hey, it's a possibility that they did not meet. It's very possible they did. They did share a lot of similar beliefs, like Tim, with the Copernican theory, with
Right.
Copernicus, his theories that the world was not the center of the universe. And this was also one of the reasons that I suspect it had a big impact on Galileo, because a lot of his works that were out for publishing, where he would put a work out, and it, as they all did at that time, it was addressed. Galileo would address a lot of his papers to astronomers and mathematicians, because they were vigorously learning. The whole point was to learn. But right when Giordano was burned, from that point on, it was almost about 2 decades really before he really got into it. Before he started having the Inquisition hot on him. He
But you know what?
he was a little more fortunate.
But he was chased for his beliefs for a long time. In 1576, when he was just a Dominican friar, which is also kind of ironic that he was a Dominican friar, and then
He sure was. Yeah.
But he was accused of heresy just because of what he was reading and what more or less he was.
But he was reading a banned book. It was a.
He was reading a banned book.
Yeah.
But it was also something along the belief of the Arianism.
Right.
I don't, basically that Jesus Christ was created by God and was not always around. So it was like a creation of, in other words, God created Jesus Christ. It was that belief, and that was heresy at that time.
Yeah.
And that
Erasmus, he wrote all of his books were banned, I believe, during the Renaissance time. They were no-nos. He lived I think a century before, so but his books were dangerous before the Inquisition, you know?
Right.
But in places like Germany and the Netherlands, Erasmus was just fine. Like people like Martin Luther knew it well. A lot of his ideas were in the 95 Theses that Martin Luther nailed to the church door. But I call that lightweight because my guy Pico Mirandola wrote 900 Theses. So, 95 was the abbreviated version. But Tim, man, you brought up a good point, man. Tim, you sent me a little message here. I forgot to mention that he was born right outside Mount Vesuvius as well. That's rather important.
Yeah, Florence is a little north of Naples, of where he actually was born. But
did you see the statue of Giordano Bruno when you were in Florence?
Yes, I did.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm very jealous. I have not been to Florence, but will. I promise.
Yeah, you will.
I promise. So, Timmy, we got a guy here who was firm in his beliefs, believed in the ancient ways. He sought out many early masters. We had a show on last week about Marsilio Ficino, and Marsilio had a major impact in Bruno. And I'm proud to say he had a major impact in me too. And so in that tiny degree, I will relate with Bruno that in my personal learnings, when I get to a certain point, there are people like Marsilio who just seem to take a lot of the info I got. And he has a nice way of putting it in order for me to understand so much more than I was hoping the information would give me. And this is exactly what Bruno writes. And this is exactly what Marsilio was trying to tell everyone. It was his teachings were to put the thought onto you so you could see it. So you don't have to be told something. You need to understand. You don't need the facts. You need to see. You need observation and proper direction. And Bruno, my goodness, was he stuck in his ways though, because not only did he feel he was right about everything he said, he felt it was his purpose to teach it to everybody, even if people didn't want to hear it, even if it meant him getting in a little bit of trouble. And but Tim, he was a Dominican friar to begin with. Yeah, a lot of people forget that, and he was for some time, and he appreciated it. You know, it's something he wanted to do. He was able to basically live for free and study, right? But being a Dominican friar was also a little bit different. They had a little bit of leniency from the Inquisition. So I must point that out, being that when they were upset with him, that meant, everyone was upset with you because Rome was already upset. The Roman Church was already upset with what he was saying and what he was writing. He had written The Art of Memory, which is a rather remarkable writing, absolutely fantastic. I wish everyone would read it. He wrote quite a bit on the understanding and perspective and Hermetic thought, but he started getting a little dangerous, and he was pushing the envelope, and he was still a powerful guy in respect that he had big friends and he was well learned, and that gets you really far. And Bruno knew, I'll say 4 languages. I've heard up to 6 or 7, but it appears that he knew 4 pretty good, in my opinion. If he knew more, it's quite possible. But I just cannot confirm that. But he had to go on the run for a little bit in his life, and he made a few stops. He was in the Netherlands. He was in Germany. He spent some time in Paris. He spent a good deal of time in Paris. And
actually, he visited Paris a couple times, and in between, I think he went to Prague.
There you go, Tim. And then he was in Queen Elizabeth's Court in London for a little bit.
Yeah, he really wandered. He was just a wanderer for a while, kind of trying to find a home, because once he started running, he really couldn't find a place that that the people would accept his ideas and his beliefs. But he kept trying to be accepted by academia.
Right.
In whatever country he would go to, whatever city he would.
And he pretty much was. But
he applied for several positions as as professors and whatnot. He got denied often, very often.
Yeah.
But there were a couple times he actually did. He landed a couple jobs. Man couldn't hold a job for some reason. I guess people just didn't like him.
It's funny, when you know someone in history, right? And you try to imagine who they were, and it's just he's definitely intelligent. He has a good understanding of what he knows. He knows very credible, good people everywhere he goes. Royals and the scholars of the like in all nations.
Well, he made a name for himself with the art of memory. That really is what put him on the map, because people were saying, "Hey, there's this guy who knows this trick," more or less.
Right, more or less, really.
But that's really what it was, and that's what got.
But no one considered it a trick,
But that's what Henry III found in him, and he said, "Hey, get this guy,
right,
before me."
Right.
Because that's really cool. But he, a lot of people think that maybe he wasn't just interested in that, but he was actually trying to find out if he was in fact practicing magic of some sort, or
right.
whatever it may be.
Well, I did leave that one out. He did write a fantastic book on magic. Yeah, I've read it. It's brilliant. But his magic's different than what other people would call magic today. Huge difference, gigantic difference. But he was in Paris for Tim, a few times, but one time he spent a good deal of time there, and ultimately that's what happened too. People got a little bit fed up with him, and the Inquisition was hot on his trail, but he accepted an invitation to go to England and to speak on Copernicus and his model and theory of the universe. And it was at Oxford University. And, the high scholars, they understood, they wanted to know more, but more or less he got laughed out of there. And that's when Queen Elizabeth's court grabbed him up and kept him in England for a few years. And this was a good time. Queen Elizabeth had great artists, great scholars. John Dee was in Queen Elizabeth's court.
There was a whole circle of hermeticists.
Oh yeah,
in that area at that time, and there's a lot of speculation that he definitely met and mingled in those circles. But there's whether or not he actually was if he ever met John Dee's, I think that's still in question. I don't think anyone's ever proven that.
Well, we're going to be talking about John Dee next week, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one we're looking forward to. But we have a little bit of help next week. We're bringing in the big guns. We have Robert Sullivan, who's been on the program before, and he knows John Dee well, and Robert is Mr. Sullivan is a 32nd degree Freemason, and he's going to give us his direction on John Dee. I think I know a little bit about John Dee, a little bit, but not enough, especially for the things we're going to get into. It's going to be specifically interesting that we're going to have Mr. Sullivan here, Tim. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, he can speak very well on John Dee. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So, Bruno, I want to come back to the Elizabethan court in a little bit. His books on magic, Tim, mm-hmm. They were controversial, no doubt, but they weren't going to burn him alive for that. He was. I was going to say he was delicate, but he's He's not a delicate person. He gives you the way he writes, he gives it to you very straight. And he'll often say, there's only one way to see this. It's, to look at it the way I'm telling you, or you're stupid. He was.
Yeah, he was kind of harsh.
He would just tell you flat out. One of my favorite quotes he has is, we are given many paths and footprints to follow in order to reach God, if we are worthy. It is not a sin. We must be careful, of course, but it is stupidity that we all must fear.
He also made quite a few comments publicly that, and I'm paraphrasing, but more or less that anyone that follows the Bible word for word or takes the Bible literally is ignorant or is stupid, something along those lines. He would speak on that
right
openly, and during that time period, it was a big no-no.
Oh, it was a huge no-no. It was a huge no-no. But he was treading water so finely because he was trying to interpret things for them. Exactly what you were saying, Tim. He was trying to say, things couldn't be. There's an understanding that you might not be told. So it was put down in a book, and you have to try to see what's being told to you. You can't take it so literally. Where he even says people's names in the Bible have changed over years. Stories have changed. Stories regarding certain individuals have gone from one person to another. And that's where he really started getting in trouble, where they said, no, you can't do that. This book we have today, this is the only book. This is the one and only. And that's where they started having a big problem, where he was saying, well, no, you don't know. I've been studying these things, and I know this and I know that. And that's when he hit the high road, man. That's when he was on the run. Because there was no turning back. He would have had to have repented and taken it back. And once you do that, then they would have fully closed him up. They wanted to put a lid on him, and they chased him around Europe, and he did pretty good for a long time. He was probably keen enough to avoid capture. I'm sure he had a little bit of help from influential people everywhere he was, because that's who he surrounded himself with. But it was a trap that ultimately did him in, and he was turned in by a friend of his, and unfortunately,
Giovanni Mocenigo, I butchered
of
that
Venice.
name.
Yeah, the Venetian.
He basically sent him an invitation to come and teach him the art of memory. And I think he was there for 2 months before basically Giovanni became angry with him for some reason, whatever it was, whether he was beforehand or not, whether he was framed, who knows. But within 2 months, Bruno was arrested for heresy and blasphemy.
Blasphemy. Mm-hmm. Well, poor Giordano. The man was a true genius nonetheless. He was caught into a little bit of a trap and ultimately imprisoned for 7 years.
I think one thing that's important to point out is that all of academia back then held Aristotle's word as basically gold. Anything, they always went back to Aristotle, no matter what the topic was.
Yeah, Aristotle's theory of the universe, that was the accepted Rome theory.
Right.
Yeah.
And anyone that argued that more or less was a heretic.
Right.
And scientifically and religiously, more or less. It's just because that's the belief system that they all subscribe to.
Right.
But in 1585, Bruno wrote the 120 Theses against Aristotle's natural science, and so that was a direct slap in the face to all of academia. And
but
scientific
he did an amazing job at explaining it. I look at it and say, how could these people be so ignorant not to listen to what he's saying? He gives you so many examples where you have to acknowledge a few of them.
Well, that's the thing. In his writings, he was quite eloquent.
Mm-hmm.
In person, he was a little more rash and he was more outspoken and well, at least that's what history writes it as.
Right.
That's history paints this picture of this man who was just outlandish and, you know,
He was very firm. You know, he believed in his ways very strongly, and but not ignorantly. Where he would give you examples, many examples on why he would believe in such a thing. I wish he lived in another time, but likewise I could say that with at least 10 other people from his period. But you know, working in secret for a lot of these guys might have produced a lot better work. You know, where there wasn't as much leisure involved in it. It was you know, meetings for specific reasons, and you know, only a certain amount of time, and so there was a lot of secrets going on, a lot of secret printings, publishings in other countries under many different names. But hey, Bruno goes on the run from the Inquisition.
He published things under different names?
No, many other people were. No.
Oh,
no,
right.
Not Bruno. No. He did not concern himself with that. You know, he wanted people to know exactly who was saying it. Mm-hmm. And he felt he was the best one to explain it. Rightfully so. I'll go to it again. The guy was a Hermetic genius, and his works show it. His books are fantastic. I really recommend everyone reading at least one of his books. Pick up The Art of Memory. Surely it must be available on Amazon. It must be. If it's not, send me a message.
You know, I never read that book.
You'll find a PDF in your email.
I never had the chance to read it. It's on my list, but from what I understand, it's more or less using imagery and familiar objects and familiar images to correspond
to
with
a degree.
Other things. Is that am I?
But he had a brilliant, fantastic way. It's hard to do it without images, but basically, you'd have to think it's circles inside of circles inside of circles. He would think of one particular circle, and then it's hard to explain. There are images available online of what I'm trying to explain. Circles within circles. He tried to explain it. It makes no sense when I do it. That's why you really got to read his book, because there's a lot more to it than just the image. You know, Tim. Mm-hmm. It's
yeah, no, but I was
did have an image, but it was the last page of his book.
Right. Well, no, I was under the impression that what he was saying was that he would use the zodiac and the images of the zodiac or the symbols of the zodiac as tools to more or less memorize things and to go back and I don't know. I guess maybe I gotta just read the book.
I think you would really like it, Tim. I really do. I know you would. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's a fantastic work, and what people forget is this. He wrote this when he was a friar, and obviously the powers that be immediately above him really appreciated it and enjoyed it, and loved seeing examples of it. And then this went right up the line to the archbishops and cardinals, and ultimately he received an invitation and accepted to go to Rome and give his examples and show off this art of memory to the Pope, which he did. And he gave the Pope a copy of it, which Pope accepted. And it wasn't long after that that the fires were hot on his trail. But, you know, it might have been a little bit that he was getting a little too cocky, you know. He was pushing a little too far. But something tells me the guy really had a lot to say from the beginning. And it just took a little time to put it into books, because before he went to Paris, Tim, when he was still in the Florence area, he was really putting out a few books, and he was putting them out maybe like one every other year, which is a lot. It took a lot of time to write and print books, and they were masterpieces as far as I'm concerned. I think every one of them is a work of art. which brought him safety everywhere he went, everywhere. And
Well, from what I understand, anytime he found some kind of peace or a peaceful a town that he was allowed to live in without getting chased out, he would write rigorously. He would just pump out books like a madman, because that's really all he would. It's not like he was going to go out and go around town during those time periods, because speaking necessarily he wasn't allowed to speak in public in certain cities.
well, I don't like that. But hey, that's the time, you know. When he did all this as a friar, that came to an end too. And as we were talking about, he lost all his friends there, and he lost all the friends he had within the church, and he had to leave the area. He wasn't safe in Florence, and I'm sure a lot of his contemporaries weren't too pleased with him around either, because he had to be sleeping somewhere, and he didn't have his own home, so he had to get out of town. But I always appreciated him that he was always among scholars and nobles wherever he went. He was always well accepted, until the church was hot on him. And
well, you know, I think we've talked about it before that for the most part, a lot of the scholars in the church probably understood what he was saying, and they knew about these texts, because
right.
As we discussed last week, Ficino translated the Hermetic texts in, you know, what let's say 80 to 100 years prior, right?
Yes. I'd say Ficino did it in the 1480s, yeah.
So there was already a revival of the Hermetic texts.
No doubt about it.
It's not like it was completely forgotten. You know, I mean, you think about us 100 years ago, the Theosophical Society was prevalent in, you know, in New York and parts of Europe. And, you know, we have a pretty good understanding of it now, even though it was 100 years ago. These priests, most people aren't educated at this time. But if you're if you're a man of the cloth, if you're a man of the clergy, you're educated one way or another. And, you know, they knew about these texts, and they knew the dangers of it for themselves, because let's face it, at the time, the church really had a problem with the belief system. And the main part, and this is my opinion, but the main part of the belief system of the Hermetic philosophy that they do not agree with is that the power of God more or less is within you, that you can access the power of God. You look in yourself and you can find the answers for what you need. You don't really need a priest. You don't need the church. You can do it yourself if you just know where to look, and if maybe you need somebody to guide you and help you, but you can look within yourself, and you have that power within yourself.
Absolutely.
That was the big problem. That's why the church saw him as a threat, and that's why they did what they did. That's why they chased him out of every city.
Right. Yeah, he was a big believer on that, as a few were at the time, but a few, and he felt the divinity was in every single one of us, every single living creature, and again, like Ficino, it came from the sun. You know, it was the sun. The sun was the center of everything. The sun was the cross in the sky, and it's what brings life, and all life needs sun. They gave a few examples of it, and just like Giordano said, just like there are many other suns and planets going around that, and life on those planets, and maybe even more developed than we are.
And these are ideas that were just so incredibly foreign to. I mean, this is 1500s.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like science fiction.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, because just the Copernican theory of the sun model being the center of the universe, our solar system. That was a lot of problems. But to say that there was life living on other planets that could possibly be more advanced, where he said mathematically the possibility of them being more advanced is clearly there, just as the possibility of them being less advanced is there. But he said there's one thing you can't do is remove the mathematic solution that life must exist on other planets, on other suns, because they're infinite. There's an infinite amount of them. There's infinite amount of suns, infinite amount of planets, infinite amount of life,
and he also
amount of
understood
time.
the probability that there would, with the infinite amount of worlds that there are out there, the probability of them that there had to be life. He understood
Right.
that. Like the law of large
And
numbers.
way ahead of his time, because 20 years ago or so, we had Professor Drake gave us the Drake equation, which is a mathematical equation focusing on the probability of life in, beyond our solar system. And that brought about the Goldilocks zone, and now we're currently finding planets in that region, which would sustain life that we know of. Whereas it might be similar to the conditions here on Earth. So he was a little bit ahead of his time on a few things, and that's
but that's just the
wild
thing, Joe. He wasn't ahead of his time. We were just that far behind.
I'm with
and that's
you
how
there, buddy.
far we are behind now.
Right.
And we're just really playing catch up, man. And the texts that he got these ideas from were written.
But that's just what
academia says.
They were ideas, exactly what it was. It's not like he read a book that said that was the case.
No.
He had ideas, and that's exactly what he's trying to tell everyone was, don't wait for someone to tell you something. Pay attention. Figure it out. Their answer is right before you. You have the power to understand anything you want to. Just get out of your own way for a minute. Just
like we've said, if you have the question, you have enough information for you to figure out the answer. All you need is the question and your mind.
That's it. And hey, I happen to believe the same thing. Isn't it interesting? But hey, I'm a known hermetic. Those are my books, but I could say that confidently, being completely raised as a Roman Catholic, going through all the ranks, as Tim,
the ranks.
I went through all the stages. I went through and through. I even got my Alloterry Day award from Cardinal O'Connor at St. Patrick's Cathedral. I'm not just. I look at religions, theology, and practices all as understandings and teachings. If you go to the original Christian teachings or Catholic teachings, as I did, you start to question a lot of things. And I was not afraid to question these sorts of things. And unless you question what you don't understand, you will never understand it. It's that simple. And you don't sit around and wait for the right answer. Just think about a better question. That's all. And that was something Bruno would have taught. You can understand it all yourself. You don't even need them. You might need guidance to get to the point of understanding, but once you're there, you're on your own. And he was a teacher in the sense that he was assured that once you would understand it, you were no different than anyone else who understood it. You would understand it fully. And the point would be that once you're in that understanding, to just keep it going. And that was something that he did with the art of memory. And that's exactly what he would teach us. Once you fall into it, per se, you're understanding it, you could just start pulling things out, whether they're your thoughts or not. And these were his examples for the divine thought that came from the sun, the divinity that was put into him. And this was all in his book of The Art of Memory, and would follow it up with his ideas on life on other planets. And he felt that all of this was an understanding that you could easily do, that he wasn't being far-fetched, that you were just being ignorant to understanding. And unfortunately, he wasn't well-mannered about it. He probably said it a lot ruder than I just did. These texts that he wrote were very questionable, yes. But Tim, you and I, the last time you were here, we were talking about his text, a few specifically, and we had even gotten into the discussion on, besides his books on the magic and the art of memory, the majority of his books, over half of his books, are written almost in the form of a play, where he uses many different characters. And he tried doing so a little bit too, so the words necessarily wouldn't have to be his. But, ultimately, if you're all six of the characters and you're the only writer of the book and your friend printed it, they're really only coming to look for you. He did this on many occasions, but he was so good with it. He was so proper with the way he went about it. I really appreciated it. But he was coming from Florence, where plays were being written, plays were being acted out, opera had been invented now at this point. So theater was understood, and he was there. He was in Florence and Venice, so he grew up while these were just springing into fruition. So he was there during a great deal of inspiration. So it was very, very inspirational people and great vibes that were going around. And all this came with understanding. This was the Renaissance, the rebirth, right? If you wonder what happened to the Renaissance, it's because everyone stopped thinking like this, because you had to. Remember earlier we were saying we don't know if the church knew of certain books? Well, we knew that they were specifically targeting certain books and having book burnings. And one of the Ficino letters, Tim, that I hold very dearly, is titled, it's a dialogue between the soul and God. And it's a wonderful letter. And that letter has been in the Vatican's possession for 500 years. But the Vatican has made it public. And I'm grateful for that. There's many others. And soon, we will be seeing a lot more of these, because they're in the first phase of putting out the Vatican Library into the digital archives. It's one of three phases. This is phase one, and phase one will last 20 years. So for approximately the next 50 to 60 years, documents and books will be digitalized for public viewing. However, there will be no catalog or descriptions on what these will be. So you could open up document H24BCH and it be Marsilio Ficino, but unless you go through them individually, you will have no idea. And they plan on keeping it that way. Before we go track,
go ahead.
No, go ahead. We're going to be heading to a break in a minute anyway.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, I'm still skeptical. The Vatican, I know that you do praise them for, publishing what they are publishing. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know if it's trustworthy, just because of the fact that they don't have a very good trustworthy history. That's really
It's not very nice to say, Tim.
But I'm referring to what they've done to texts. Over the centuries, they've edited texts. They've blacked out fragments of text and then released that saying, "Oh, this is the text." Like, oh, why would you black that out? Why would you alter it? Why would you remove pages? It's just, I don't know. So any kind of a nice move by them, I'm always just taken with a grain of salt. That's just the way I am.
I hear you. In the Ficino letters case, it was just a scanned original document. I'm not saying it can't be altered, but it's not like they're translated for you or anything. So that's another thing. They really don't think. Not too many people really know Latin anymore. That's really what it boils down to. Be honest with you, they really don't.
It's hard to find a school that teaches it. Yeah.
But even when I was a kid, my first year in school, kindergarten, was in a Catholic school in Queens, New York, and they still spoke Latin for certain parts of the Bible. But it ended right then, right away, right around that period where they just really stopped altogether. But my parents' generation, at least in where they were in New York City, church was still Latin. They Mass was in Latin. So my parents were pretty cool with Latin. My dad's pretty good with it. He still is. See, he's pretty good at German too. I don't know how. I don't know where he.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Shocking, right? I have no idea where that came from, but yeah, he's fluent in German, written and spoken. It's crazy. Crazy. I don't understand when that happened. I think it was early in his life when he was a kid or something. But Al in the chat room just wrote it's a bunch of bull, Tim C.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. Hey Al, what's up, buddy?
I think he's referring to the Vatican.
And Olive, Patrick, Lady Horse and Painter, Vaubert, Bell. I'm trying to get some shout outs in real fast. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
So I'm going to just save this for, I was going to tear into this next topic here I have for Bruno, but I'm going to wait till after the break. But I'm going to take this moment, Tim, to remind everyone that we are broadcasting here on freedomslips.com. And you need to get over to freedomslips.com right now and get into the chat room. And you will find interesting people in there, great conversations, good topics. You will find 2 studios running concurrently, Studio A and Studio B. Fantastic programming on both. Look at the schedule. We'll talk to you in a few minutes. Be right back. Welcome back to Researchers Radio. I am Joe K. with my man Tim C. Tim C, are you back?
I'm back.
All right, we just had to check. You were being so gentle and quiet over there. Usually,
yeah, that's what people know me as, gentle.
Oh yes, yes. That's the word, Tim. So, where were we?
Well, I think we're just getting into the seed pack.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Okay, everyone, go to freedomslips.com. You will find a wonderful chat room, a schedule. You must look at schedule. There's a button for Studio A and Studio B. Take a look. There's a lot of good shows covering every topic you could possibly imagine. Get in the chat room. Get yourself a name. Go into the archives. Get yourself a $5 a month subscription to the archives. You can access any of the shows in the last 3 years of the station's history. And with approximately 70 shows, there's 70 some odd shows being added every week. So everyone, please get over there. I'm asking because here at freedomslips.com, this program and the rest of the programs alike, we are all run on donations by our listeners. We're the largest listener-supported station, and we're really trying to keep it that way. We've said this before. If we don't start getting donations here during this time slot, Tim C is going to have to start doing Depends ads and condom ads. I mean, this is, we can't have that.
I don't use condoms. I can't do that.
So just get over to freedomslips.com, everyone, and make a donation because Tim needs to buy some supplies. So, Tim, Giordano Bruno we were talking about.
Damn you, Joe.
Oh, well, I love you, buddy. I love you. It's all good.
All right, let's do it.
Giordano Bruno, the Hermetic. I would like to talk about how we established who he was, where he's from, who his friends who his friends were, who they may have been, who may they not have been. But the dude was on the run, and he went to Paris, did some great writing there. He put forth a few good works, but they weren't his best intellectual works. There's something I wanted to focus on. This is one of my personal theories, Tim, and we've gone through this before, and it just recently came to me, as you know, that I had found out that John Dee was actually the one who constructed Shakespeare's Globe Theater, and I had not known that. I am aware of the Globe Theater. I'm aware that when I was young in life, the location of the Globe Theater was lost. It was just lost in antiquity, and I always found that amazing.
Now,
That it was lost because they had great maps then.
but did you? He was the architect. Am I right about that? He
Yeah.
designed it, right?
Yes. Yeah. 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 I don't think he actually picked up a hammer or anything, but yes, it was his task to design, and he was involved with uh, not just the design, but the whole process. Not like architects today, where they just draw the plans and don't ever go to the site. Um, but anyway, John Dee was a member of Queen Elizabeth's court. He was a scholar, no doubt, and he had his hands in many things. Designing and building the Globe Theater was one I didn't know. What I was saying was to him that when I was young, it was known that the Globe Theater's location was lost, but I think it was a little over 10 years ago or so. They actually found its original location. They found the foundation of it. But I say that because I've had suspicions that Giordano Bruno was somehow very influential uh, with the writings of William Shakespeare. Uh, it's definitely a question in my mind who William Shakespeare was. Uh, I really don't think it's the person that they say it was. Um, and I have reasons for this on both sides of the argument. The man from Stratford, I hope I'm saying that right, Stratfordshire.
That sounds right.
Okay. Um, that's supposed to be the guy who was really William Shakespeare. He was just until he wrote these magnificent works, he was just a regular old dude from a small town in England. And what turns out is we have Giordano Bruno in Queen Elizabeth's court with John Dee and many other contemporaries of John Dee. And it was known that Giordano was translating a lot of books for Queen Elizabeth. Again, because he spoke many languages and he was fluent in several. And we have the years of Giordano Bruno. The year he's there for a few years in Queen Elizabeth's court, but ultimately when he accepts the invitation to go to Venice to teach this guy's children, which ultimately was the trap that did him in. When he was arrested and imprisoned, that was when the first Shakespeare play was written. And when Giordano Bruno was executed 7 years later, that's not even close to a proper for being burned alive is not an execution. They're completely different. Oh, thank you, Patrick English. Stratford. Okay, thanks, man. So Giordano Bruno, when he was arrested, that's when the first play was written, and when he was burned alive, that's when the Globe Theatre opened, and the first play actually took place in London. And just on that alone, those are not my solid reasons. That's just setting the foundation. We also have to remember that the man from Stratford, just a regular common man from Stratford, he would not nearly know the lives and the daily occurrences of early people such as Julius Caesar, nor would he be able to base half of his works in Florence and Venice, which Shakespeare has done. The man from Stratford has never been outside of England. It makes no sense. This is not a time where the man from Stratford would be able to pick up a lot of books and literature and get an understanding on the daily occurrences in Florence and Venice. It's one thing to pick up a book and get the history, but to actually write the plays well enough that you can personify the feelings and emotions of the characters of that time. That is what he did so well. And to me, it's no coincidence the timing of all of this. And Bruno, I know where he came from. I know Bruno. He was in the Medici Library for decades, and This is where we would find all the early works. This is where plays were being written. The plays had been being acted out for almost 100 years in that region prior to Bruno. So he was well versed in it. He understood the method, and Tim, as we said earlier, he wrote. Bruno wrote in the style of plays,
Right.
primarily in all of his latter works. His early works were, as we said, his theses or on magic or on the art of memory. They were specific. They were specific and very direct. But when he was trying to get messages, ideas across, understandings as a whole, he would encompass it in a play, and he would have one person being each character per se, giving it to you in one being gentle, one being direct, one being religious, and he covered all ideas, and he did so in such a nice way that each person complemented each other. Each character would complement each other, although being completely contradictive of each other. That is a very rough thing to do, and to do it well. And this is what he did. And so I could only question that if there are ideas such as Roger Bacon or John Dee being in Queen Elizabeth's court producing such works like this, it's quite possible because Bruno was there. And let's I did leave out one of my favorite stories that Bruno arrived in London with just his donkey and books. You know, his donkey was just overloaded with books, and he showed up there with all of these old books, and he was there for a few years translating and doing whatever he did for the Queen. But when he fell into the trap and he left the Queen's court, that's when William Shakespeare picked up his first pen, and it's not first pen. It's when Shakespeare started writing his first play.
Well, the truth is, when he was in England between 1582 and 1585, he wrote a lot. Actually, he wrote tons of works. I don't know if he wrote the Chandelier, the play, the Chandelier. I don't know if he wrote that in England or not, but that wasn't the same year that he at least traveled to.
I wonder. That's a good question, Tim. Is it in France or in Paris or in London? We're gonna have to.
I think he left France in like 81. I'm pretty sure he left France in 81. It was either 81 or 82.
Okay. All right. So, Giordano Bruno has been like the center point of my conspiracies to figure out Shakespeare. But I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to figure out Shakespeare. That's my goodness. That is something I can't even get into because I'm already certain from what I've seen from other people's research that the first printings, the first editions, when Shakespeare's plays were first in print, those first editions are encoded. There's codes in those that people have been cracking, and they make good sense. But that would go to the writer. I don't know how this man from Stratford would be encoding works and writing about foreign lands in such detail. Not to mention, again, the Caesars. You know, when he writes Julius Caesar and Macbeth and things like that, that information, those books were not in print. Those books should not have been in England on the history of the early Caesars. Those books were printed in Bruno's lifetime, at the end of his life. While he was imprisoned, they were being printed. But I know for a fact that there was a book written that he might have had access to that told all the stories of all the Caesars up to, I believe it was Emperor Maximilian, I believe. I think he was the emperor to like maybe 1520, I believe, somewhere around there. But nonetheless, the Caesar line, there was a book printed of all the Caesars all the way up to him. Because again, what people always seem to forget is that the Eastern Roman Empire, being the Constantinople region, they still had an emperor as Rome didn't. Rome had popes, but Rome did elect their own emperor, who was Charlemagne. But the Eastern Roman Empire had their own line of emperors, or early on Caesars, if you will. But that was a long line that kind of came to an end right around. I think who ended that ultimately? Napoleon. I think Napoleon is the one who ended.
Perhaps.
I believe so. But it was pretty much null and void at that point anyway. In Giordano's time, the emperor really didn't have any power in Rome. It was just ironic being the Roman emperor, but he was still holding power in Netherlands and in Germany, places like that. Those regions, modern day Vienna, Austria, right? Yep, Hungary. So these pretty much sums up my little theory on Giordano having his hands in the work somehow with being Shakespeare. There is one other thing. There's just one tiny little thing. When Giordano Bruno was imprisoned for 7 years, it is well documented to a degree, and I say that because during the Inquisition they documented everything, and a great majority of these works still exist. When it comes to Giordano Bruno, those works are pretty much lost. The papers regarding his Inquisition and the hearings, they're pretty much lost, but there are some parts of it. And the parts that exist say that when he was imprisoned for 7 years, that he had no guests. No guests were allowed, not by his choice, but he was not allowed to have any guests. However, he was given a lot of paper and writing utensils for the 7 years. It seems like he was busy writing something. And with that said, that's my little conspiracy of Bruno having his hand somehow in the works of being Shakespeare, or not him being Shakespeare, but somehow in regards to the works of William Shakespeare.
Lady Horse in the chat room had made a comment earlier that William Shakespeare was a group of many, not just one person. You can see it in the different writing styles. And I happen to...
Thank you very much, Lady Horse.
I happen to agree with that. I mean, I don't know Shakespeare that well, but from what I've read of it, I definitely... I do like that.
I do agree. I certainly do. And it's also one other thing that we should point out is it is known historically that Bruno was translating a lot of text for the Elizabethan court, but it's not known what he was translating. Those seem to be lost. It was written that he was doing a lot, but we really don't know what he was doing, what he was translating or what he was writing for the court. We know, Tim, you pointed out, we know he did do works of his own, but what he was doing for the court, we kind of don't know. We know he was translating, but we just don't know what. That's all kind of been lost somehow. So it's just a lot of sketchy circumstances regarding Bruno in the last decade of his life, not just in Italy, Venice, in London. There was a lot going on there, and I wonder what would be the scenarios that would play out if he had not gone to Venice. But I know the guy wanted to go home.
Well, you see, now that's the thing. There's a lot of speculation about that as well, because this is a man who he left his home in 1579, right? No, actually, it was earlier than that. It was like 1576. He left his home, and he hadn't been back to Italy since that time. He'd been all over Europe, but what would make him think it was safe to go back to that area? You know, I mean, he got this invitation from Giovanni Mocenigo.
Yeah.
But
who he thought was...
I mean, he didn't go back for family.
With him.
He wouldn't go back for family, friends, or anything. He left his entire life. But what would compel him to just say, all right, you know what? Enough time's gone by, you know, let bygones be bygones. You know, yeah. I mean, come on, seriously. Now, granted, Venice was not really considered Italy at that time. I mean, it was more or less its own little city-state, but it's the same general area. And that's what I just don't understand, because I think he did go. He went down. Yeah, actually, he went to Padua first.
Right. But that's kind of Venice.
Right.
That's
Right.
kind of right.
I mean, who knows?
Right.
That-
Well, I know
Texas law
I know he
students-
wanted to teach there too at Padua University, but that didn't happen. Ficino taught there, and I mean that school there had some masters for a couple centuries. That is an old school. That is an oldie. That's there's a lot of early masters that went to that school, but that was Venice at that time, right?
And it's funny because it's not really funny, but the Lutherans excommunicated him a couple of years before that, like 4 years in 1588. He went to Prague, and I guess he actually landed a professorship, and for whatever reason, the Lutherans excommunicated him. But in all of the research I did on this, I didn't see anywhere where he was excommunicated from the well, we'll just say the Catholic Church.
Right. I believe you're right about that.
It's just interesting after all of the accusations and all of the, even with the trial, they just burned him. They didn't want to excommunicate him. They wanted to make an example of him.
Yeah. He was in his ways, man. Even right up until the very last day, and they said, we're going to bring you out into the town square and we're going to cook you very slowly over this fire. And he said, I'm going to stand out there and I'm going to tell everyone everything you don't want to hear. And they said, you're not, because I'm going to nail this huge spike through your mouth into your chest.
And that really was the square. That was like the market, the town market.
Absolutely.
That's where people went to talk, to meet, to get food, to buy products, whatever. It was the place. And that, it's really sick. But
yeah, absolutely.
We really didn't talk about the trial,
mm-hmm.
but what I always found was disturbing was I guess he was one of the, and you know what, the name has left my mind, but he was more or less in charge, he was the quarterback, pulling for let's burn him, let's take him down. That sounds right.
Yeah.
They canonized him in the 1920s or 1930s.
That's right. So
what do? They the Catholic Church makes him a saint.
Well, yeah. Well, you see, they about 100 years ago, there was a movement to try to get the church to forgive Bruno, and they said absolutely not, like not a chance. They did ultimately, like I think in the 80s, ask for forgiveness for all of the people they've done wrong for, including Galileo, all of these people they've caused troubles for, but not specifically. And it was funny, Tim, because right after that, when they denied, say no, we are standing firm on our ground, they almost said like he deserved it, they won't take that back. And then yeah, you're right, they canonized that very guy right at that same time.
But that is so not. That's so against the core Catholic belief to forgive. I just don't get it. You're supposed to You're supposed to forgive. You're supposed to love your enemies. You're supposed to be compassionate, and that's so against what the beliefs are of that religion. I don't know.
Hey, I hear you loud and clear. Loud and clear. These are my frustrations as well. I don't see the piety in it, if you will.
There you go.
And that's their words. Dealing with the religious factor, it was, obviously, it was to control. We know that. That was the strong push at that time. Was the Roman Church was trying to encompass all of Europe. And then ultimately the whole known world is what they made the attempt to do. And that was when the New World came to be. And the same thing went to, we talked about this on earlier programs, that the King of Spain and the King of Portugal They were given they were given rights of decree by the Pope that said you can go and conquer any land you want, and you could keep it and do whatever you want with it, so long as you take this Bible and you make those people convert to this. Those were the rules, and those documents still exist, and that's what they did, and that was the time. It was convert or die. It's that simple.
And the really scary thing, is that any different from what is happening in like the Middle East right now? Like
no different at all.
It's just crazy.
And I really say that because that's exactly what was going on. They were just going into random countries, nations, and that's exactly what was happening. Full conversion or die. That's it. There was no other choice. At least ISIS gives them the option to flee. I don't know how real they are on that, but that is one of their terms. You have the option to run. You could convert. ISIS right now they give people three options. You could convert, you could die, or you could run. So, but those are options.
You're telling me that ISIS is more compassionate than 15th century?
Well, that might be your interpretation. Merely on that, I'd say yeah, but that might have been going on in the time of the Inquisition too. People were on the run, but they really weren't given the choice. They were kind of running before the Inquisition got there. And it wasn't just the Inquisition. There were armies literally just conquering. On behalf of. They were doing it in the name of the Holy Roman Church.
In the name of God.
Yeah, they were.
Stab thee.
But also. A lot of people who were doing this felt anyone who was not believing in this Christianity was completely, the devil's work. It was a lot of these people weren't just doing it to be mean. They truly, really believed it. Yeah. But a lot of the scholars knew differently. And we had let's say, in the northern regions up into Germany, we had the Augustine monks who had a little rite of passage, if you will. They were allowed to believe different things, earlier teachings, as opposed to the new book that Rome was firm on. But I should also mention that this was the birth of the monks that they couldn't speak. They were recluses. They weren't allowed to talk in public. So that was the rule. The Augustine monks were allowed to practice what they practiced within their compound, but they weren't allowed to speak at all when they were in public. So they had to be complete mutes when they were out and about. So there was a little leniency there, but again, the Roman Church had a very difficult time conquering the northern regions of Europe, like Germany, I'll say, like that area at that time. Rome never really was able to lay the law down there, and so the Augustine monks were a little bit safe there, but they started popping up around Nuremberg, late 1400s. But they were very similar to the Dominican monks, very similar. Just a few differences in the teachings. I guess the Dominican monks were just a little bit in between them. I guess a little bit between Roman and the Augustine monks. But the Augustine monks, what people don't know is when we conquered, when the Roman Empire conquered Mexico and captured Montezuma and took down the whole civilization that was already there. The first settlements that went up was Augustine monks. They were the first people to build any buildings, and they built their monasteries all throughout that region in Central America. They were the first people to really start settling, and they were doing so for religious freedom, right? To do what they wanted to believe in. But I always look back and wonder why there's such leniency with the Augustine monks, in one of the harshest times, because when the Inquisition was really running strong, the 1480s, with again with the witch hunt with the Maleficarum. This is when the Augustine monks were granted their area where they were allowed to confine themselves and practice what they believed in. So it's just interesting to me why and how a group of people, not a large group, were able to come to these terms with the church, when it seems that the church really wasn't much for giving in.
So you detect some shenanigan?
I don't detect shenanigans, but it's
odd.
But it's for God, right?
We'll let them slide.
But why kill anyone else? I mean, Tim, it was without even having a show just about the Inquisition. I mean, it was really bad.
Well, I'm being facetious because you're speaking to me right now, and the truth is I never thought about it, and it doesn't sit right with me that they would just allow that and
well, I mean,
really
it's
butcher all these other people.
Right. I know. I often think the same thing. I don't know. I could only assume that knowledge was power in this case, as usually always, because the Augustine monks really didn't have any money. There's no proof that anything was purchased, anything like that for establishment. It was just, okay, fine. You can do that if you can believe whatever you want to believe and think and teach whatever you want, as long as it's inside your compound. And anytime you leave, you can't talk. You're
So they probably didn't fear them because they weren't going to spread the word, and it's not like they're going to recruit people.
Right, but in their beliefs that shouldn't stand, right? There shouldn't be any leniency.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
So it upsets me that in some regions it was a little different than others, like in the Iberian, Portugal, Spain area. Man, that was terrible what they were doing to people there. Absolutely horrible.
Martin Luther was an Augustinian monk.
Absolutely he was, yeah.
And when they kicked him out, they excommunicated him. That's when he, I guess, more or less decided to...
But sometimes I honestly think that they excommunicated him because this was the first time that heat was brought onto them. Because Martin Luther, again, just like Bruno, he wasn't eloquent about it. He just went to the church and he nailed his 95.
Yeah.
And so to the monks, that was, hey, dude, we're trying to maintain here, and we have tight rules, man. And yeah, you can't speak, but you also can't nail that to the church door. And he did. And yeah, they excommunicated him, whether it's for the reasons they say of the separation of beliefs, but that was the one person who was bringing the heat to him. And he nailed it on the church door right down the street. So they didn't have to go too far to look for everyone. But again, hey, Martin Luther's another one. Guy ran for his life, the rest of his life. He was on the run forever. Mm-hmm. And but he felt very strongly about what he believed in, very strongly. And Bruno the same, Galileo the same. These people of that time were so firm in their ideas, but that's just the thing. Their ideas weren't just random conspiracy ideas like me saying Bruno was part in hand of being Shakespeare. I gave 3 minor examples of it, but these guys were given 95 examples, 900 examples. Bruno's 125. And that's just on the one particular topic. They did this for everything. They were amazing at giving examples. Galileo is fantastic at it. Galileo is brilliant at giving examples.
You know what's really sad, though? If you just step back and look at this whole story and you say, okay, that was 500 years ago, and people were basically running from these governments or these whatever organizations that weren't allowing them to practice what they want to, what they believe in, their own religion. And we still have this problem today. 500 years later, where have we come? How far have we really progressed? I mean, it's messed up. Humans suck.
It is. Well, I mean, I think even today I said this, but every day I'm just so disappointed with humans. You know, just sometimes I'm just really amazed I'm the same species as some people. It's the truth. I'm never amazed him. Yeah, horrible things are still going on today, and it's an absolute shame. It's in the name of religion usually.
Is in my opinion, it's the dumbest reason to cite violence. It just doesn't make any sense because it's the complete opposite of what. I mean, a religious belief is just a religious belief. Let people believe whatever the heck they want. I mean, come on. You want to believe in the spaghetti monster? Believe in the spaghetti monster. You know, I mean, it's just.
He sounds friendly though. I could just be hungry. Hey, Tim, I understand. I mean, it's really all these battles we have today, just like then, it's usually in the name of God, and in the beliefs of that these violent acts do take place, and unfortunately, I really don't see an end to it. I'm not even talking in my lifetime.
It's just human nature, I guess. There's a way of there's a way to control by fear and get power out of it.
Well,
and then there's the fanatics, of course, when you have the fundamental.
Well, I mean, then Jesus was one of the best teachers of it. You know, be the shepherd that looks out for the best of the flock and not what's for the best of the shepherd. You know, but hey, that's just religion, right? War is completely different. I don't know why they mix the two. I'm not particularly happy with either one of them right now, to be honest with you. But I'll tell you, when the Pope today, when our current Pope says things like, my intentions are to restore the original Christian teachings, I say, thumbs up, man. Finally, stop talking about it and do it already. You know, my God. I mean, the texts are there. That's what I love about today's age with the internet. The old books are there. They are really there. And I'm sorry, folks, there's not like one book I could tell you to go and look at, but there's many books. As Tim said, it's just a way of expressing the ideas and to get it through to you. But something was changed along the way where it turned into a demanding sense, a controlling thing. And I particularly, my personal opinion is that really started strong in Christianity right around the year 300. That's how I feel about it. And if you look at the books before that, I mean, you don't have to change your beliefs if your beliefs are proper. I mean, you're fine. But the stories are old. A lot of the stories are really old, and there might not be one old book that has all of the same stories, but there's a great deal of these stories in today's Bible that are much older than Jesus. And I mean, we've talked about it. I mean, I counted 13 separate times things that are credited to Jesus today were things that Jacob did prior to the year 300. So 13 things that Jesus does in today's books, Jacob used to do those, and it really pissed off everyone. It pissed off the Christians at the time too, but it pissed off Hebrews because you're now taking things from them. It was pissing off pagans because they were taking a lot of things from them, and this is what separated the Roman Empire. This is why there was an East and a West Roman Empire. This is why Constantine went to where Constantinople became and Istanbul stands today. There was a big separation of beliefs. And when things were changed around the year 300, they took that back to Rome, and that became the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, and the other was the Eastern Roman Empire. Eastern Roman Empire lasted till 1453. And then that was the Renaissance right after that. and 100 years into the Renaissance, Inquisition ran really strong, and Renaissance ended. And then you had these elite intellectuals that had to practice in secret and sometimes in little groups, uh, where they named things like Freemasons and Illuminati and things like that. Yeah, yeah, you're darn right it was. And if you look where all of these organizations originated, again, it's all in the northern regions, around the Germany areas and things like that of today. That's where they were able to, like the Augustine monks. I mean, they were a little more public, and these other groups couldn't be. But that was the whole purpose of these groups, was they came from the Eastern Roman Empire. They came from old wisdom. They knew different stories, whether belief or not. They understood uh, what what the cross was for, and if anyone wants to look into it, it's Eastern Roman Empire felt that the cross was the southern cross in the sky, which all 12 zodiacs go around. And that was the center of everything. It was the cross, the southern crux, if you will. And and in the Eastern Roman Empire, they had an image for each one of the constellations, and actually like a figure, a personification. They actually had a human figure for each one of the constellations, and and to them, that was the savior. He was the one. And I mean, it gets into a lot more. I'm not going to try to describe the differences, but you folks at home could look into it. If I'm sure everyone who believes in religion is fully scholared in their religion and all the others, so they're not ignorant of each other, right? Be open-minded when you think of religion, because they are teachings and understandings. And if you're narrow-minded and you're not thinking openly, then you're not going to get it, and you're only going to believe what you think. And
you gotta understand that,
folks.
I'm just gonna say that I would believe that all major religions are based on someone sometime having a religious experience, a divine experience of some sort. That they, do you understand where I'm going with this?
Sure.
That's what would more or less have brought about whoever the prophets are of that faith, this and that, and whatever teachings they had, whatever experiences they had. It's a major moment in that person's life, whoever it was that it goes back to, that they had some divine moment or some flash of
A revelation.
there you go. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. And you know what I have a hard time with today is with guys like Ficino that we talked about last week. Several times he writes about the Prophet Muhammad, but I could honestly say nothing like what I hear the Muslims say. Nothing at all.
I'm unfamiliar with that.
Yeah, kind of the same thing. He was same thing as just an early teacher. Tim, he had experiences where he was enlightened to see things a certain way. Mm-hmm. In history, and he went on to teach them. Now, of course, through the years, that has changed as well, and to the extent of extremism. I mean, this is where we're dealing with today. But if see, I tried telling someone just this the other day that they should pick up a book and read a little bit about Muhammad. Okay, I'm not asking anyone to like him, believe in him. I said, how could anyone criticize or say anything negative if you don't even know anything? You haven't even read anything about you don't even know anything the guy's done. How can you criticize? If you're going to judge an early teacher or any of these religious people in any religion by what's going on today, I have bigger problems. You have a big insight problem if you're doing that. Now, that would be like saying Jesus was bad. Because of what the Inquisition was doing. It doesn't make any sense at all. Now, what Muhammad was teaching, that was all goodness. Regardless if anyone believes what he was teaching or not, he had revelations. There were things revealed to him, and thus began a new religion there. But at the time, this is where I was going with it. For 400 solid years, at least, there was no problem with it at all. You know, no one had any problem with this guy, Muhammad, or his followers for hundreds of years. Nothing had changed. They were peaceful people. Uh, where it went wrong, I have no idea. I really don't. But I don't know much about that religion. I don't. I do understand the extremism does not go with what the Prophet Muhammad was originally teaching of his revelations. I don't understand that. So I'm sure somewhere along the line, there's a lot I'm missing.
So what you're saying is that earlier texts are never. Well, you didn't actually say this, but I'm just asking because there's. I'll put it to you this way. From what I understand, Muhammad was also very violent. Parts of his life, he was also violent, rather than also a prophet and a man of peace.
Well, they were conquerors, yeah,
right,
of land. But in all fairness, and I'm not trying to defend the guy. I'm really not. Who wasn't? From the year 0 to the year 1000, it was all about acquiring land. That's really what it was.
Well, Buddha wasn't, and Jesus Christ wasn't. I'm just saying.
Well, Jesus and Buddha was so much earlier, but
the point is that
the Roman Empire had no reach to Buddha territory.
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they were peaceful men. They didn't have blood on their hands. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
And this is just from from what the texts say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm you know what, I'm going to look because I'm not sure if he was a conqueror after his revelations.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But I know that's who he was as a person. But he had revelations and began a religion. Mm-hmm. And I am also aware that he was not teaching what's going on today. You know, I understand that completely. But even in Christianity, there's so many different sects. There are extreme sects of Christianity. Look at Opus Dei. I mean, they self-inflict injuries on themselves.
Look at the rattlesnake handlers.
Right.
That's insane. I don't understand that. I just don't get it. I mean, there's been several reality TV shows where they would show those people.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not going to say that they're wrong and their ideas are wrong. All I'm saying is, I feel that that's ridiculous. A rattlesnake is a rattlesnake, man. And if you get too close to it and you piss it off, it's gonna bite you.
No doubt. Well,
power God or not.
Isn't the snake and serpent supposed to be of an evil image for Christianity?
Well, but that's not the point. My point is that when you read a story in the Bible, I take it as allegory. I don't take it as real because it's just me. I just
don't take it as grab a rattlesnake and dance.
Yeah, dude. I'm not gonna slap a rattlesnake in the face and not expect to get bit just because I believe in God. No, man.
Well, I know the show you're talking about, where they had a few of these pastors. I think they're called pastors, where they did snake handlers, and I know one of them since that show. I know one of them was bitten and died. One of those.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
But that's that's common to these guys.
He was like in his 20s or something. He was young. He had a wife and whatnot. I remember when this was in the news. It wasn't that long ago.
No, not that long. Just a few months, I believe. Maybe it was almost a year ago now, Tim. Actually,
yeah. It's horrible.
It's horrible, but just like you said, you dance around with a venomous snake. I mean, one of these times it's gonna get you. It's
great.
Yeah, I don't care who you are. Rattlesnake venom will break you down fast. I mean, that eats tissue.
So I guess the point is that yes, there's extremism in every religion. That's just human nature. We take things to the extreme. Some of us do, some of us don't.
You know, it's so funny. So often we say that's just human nature, but if you ask someone what their human nature is, they have no idea. I think that's something people need to address. In Bruno's terms, you need to look at that or you're stupid. Back to my boy Bruno.
But I'll be honest with you. If I was ever on vacation in the South somewhere
Right.
and somebody told me that's a rattlesnake church, I would go in there just to watch. I would, because I would get a kick out of that. And I'm not ashamed to say it. I mean, that's maybe it's brutal, whatever, but that I would get a kick out of that. That would be entertainment for me.
I don't think it's brutal. I think it's very fair. I mean, I would like to think that's why most of the people are in the room. You know, I mean, I'm really
they're not waiting their turn. They just want to see the one idiot that's going to go up there.
Yeah. I'm just really shocked there's that many people that believe in the snake being the important part of it. But hey, I don't understand it. It doesn't mean it's wrong. You know, I just don't understand it.
They're taking the text too literally.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's. I don't know.
What did you learn today?
I'm confused. I mean, I really don't know from what part of the Bible the snake handling part would come in, but you know, I don't want to mock or criticize.
I already did, and I was trying.
Well,
you know what? I was really trying to be sensitive about it, but unfortunately, as we said earlier, I am not gentle, and the truth comes out. That's the way I feel. I feel that snake charmers are stupid, and I'm sorry, but that's just my feeling.
Hey, you said it, buddy. You said it, and all the bad voodoo towards you, man.
Yeah. What can I say?
Well, you're a bit abrasive.
Stop being honest, man.
Hey, you're abrasive. You can't help it. You know.
Being honest.
That's how it goes, Tim. It's all right. I forgive you. I'm religious. I will forgive you, my man.
Guarantee I get bit by a freaking snake tomorrow.
Yep. I hope he smiles at you. So before I have to end the show talking about snake charmers, we were talking about Giordano Bruno today, a man I dearly admire.
What happened to him?
He's burned alive. For his extreme views, and he was trying to teach people too, but he wasn't trying to convert anyone. He did tell people, you're absolutely wrong believing in that. And he would say, okay, you believe in that? Tell me why. Tell me how. And people can't give examples. They say, oh, you just have to have faith. He said, what is faith? You know, show me this. Explain it to me. Give me an example.
Yeah. Now that you mention that, he in public would denounce faith. Not so much denounce his faith, but he would denounce the idea of faith.
Right. Right. What is your faith? What are you believing? Are you believing in what someone else told you to have faith in? Or do you believe it so much that you can't explain it and you have to call it faith? And more often than not, it was, obviously, that's what you learned at church. So it's not your idea. And it led to many occurrences.
Did you know that atheists every year go to the spot where he was martyred?
I did not. No.
And celebrate. Yeah, they have a little to do there, a little get together.
They have a barbecue.
Kumbaya.
That was wrong.
They have barbecue.
Sorry, Giordano Bruno, forgive me. But I loved Bruno early on because he was pretty clear about teaching the infinite. You know how pretty much everything's infinite. Ideas, knowledge, time, space. Everything's infinite. Everything's relative. Everything's part of one. You're part of everything, and he was pretty direct on all of this stuff. And more importantly, I really love the examples he gave, because it's one thing to just say them; it's another to give a bunch of examples, enough to where someone says, "Oh, wow, I see where he's coming from now," and that's really what was getting him in a lot of trouble. It's not so much the ridiculous things they would think he was saying, but when they read the book and say, he's got a good point. And they didn't like that at all. But again, I encourage everyone, pick up a book of Giordano Bruno's. He's a very fitting character in history, and it's too bad him and many others alike had to meet their demise the way they did. But luckily today we're in an age that we can appreciate and learn from their teachings and what they were trying to say. I can assure everyone their words were just as important then as they are today. The people then are just as intuitive and in touch with things as anyone is today, probably even more so, because we are really living in a detached society, even with just the internet. I mean, I love the internet as a tool for knowledge because I could get so many books that I would have to just really travel the world to get. I could get in the click of a button or two. But on the same token, if used incorrectly, it could really just ruin your life. I mean, I know people that sit behind computers and video games for their whole life. It's what they do. It's absolutely ridiculous. Um, I can't imagine playing video games for years. By the way, I'm not a video gamer, Tim.
I mean, like you're not one of those World of Warcraft guys sitting in their mom's basement
I don't even know what that is. No.
in a diaper
Yes.
playing video
I
games.
sit at my mom's house with a diaper, though. Yeah. No video games.
20-hour sessions.
No. But I really do know a few people that play it so much so that, they'll call in sick to work because they've been up all night playing video games. I'm talking about grown adults with children. All right,
Yes.
everyone.